Hello. What do you know about the Economic Commission for Africa? Well, how does it help Africa economically? Well, today the Executive Secretary of ECA will be telling us more about the Commission, but we will also get to know about him. A warm welcome to The Real Talk. My name is Jackie Lumbasi. We are glad to be coming to you from Mythos Boutique Hotel in Chiovu. Our guest today is the Executive Secretary of ECA, Antonio Pedro. Pedro, we're very honored to have you here with us.
I'm very, very pleased to be here with you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I'm the Acting Executive Secretary of ECA.
The acting.
Exactly.
I wonder, how long have you been acting?
Well, for a year or so.
For a year or so. Yes. And do you intend to continue acting, or are you going to be confirmed sometime soon?
Well, I mean, that's the Secretary General's decision to make.
Yes.
I'm here to serve Africa, and I'll continue to do so. Yeah.
Wonderful. Tell us about yourself, Pedro. Any life detail that you'd love to share with us and you believe will make us know you more?
Well, I'm from Mozambique. I was born in a town called Mashish, which is at the coastal part of Mozambique. So I like seafood. I'm a cancer, so I have some of the feature of this you find typically in a cancer person.
Yeah.
Sometimes complex, sometimes interesting. Just a normal person as anyone else out there, I would say. Yeah.
How was it growing up in that Mashishi? Yes, how was it growing up in that small?
Well,
is it small?
I don't know, because that's where I was born, but then immediately after I was born, I was taken to where my parents were. Where my father used to be an administrator with the system in a little village called Inyarim. It is in southern part of Mozambique. And so Mashish is where you had the best hospital facilities, so that's where I was born. But I never lived in Mashish as such. But I lived in Inyamban, which is the province, and in Yarim. And so part of my life was really moving with my father wherever he was posted. So until my 7 years, so when I was 7 years old, I moved from Inyarim to the northern part of Mozambique in a place called Gurue, where I stayed there for about 2 years or so. Then my father was then transferred
to another place.
Back to another place. So we stayed there for a place called Kisiku. So, and then in Kisiku, he just stayed 6 months, and he was moved to another place called Jangamu. So perhaps that gave me the DNA of what I am today.
It prepared you for this job.
Exactly.
I was going to ask how that.
Around.
Yes, I was going to ask how that movement shaped your character, shaped the person that you are today. Because at that young age, you're moving from one place to another, changing schools, changing neighborhoods, changing friends.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
How did that impact you?
Yeah, well, I mean, for example, from Kisiku to Jangamu, that was, 6 months, and I was in the same class. So I started the 4th grade in Kisiku, and I completed it in another city. So it means really it's about adjusting as quickly as possible, is adaptability and so on and so forth, which are important skills for an international civil servant as I am today. It's really about having the capacity to immediately integrate yourself in wherever you are sent to. But it comes with a cost. One of the costs is really about packing. Packing is terrible.
Yeah.
It is terrible. Especially, in our case, me and my wife, we like wherever we are, that's our home. It means we carry all of our trash with us wherever we go.
Yeah.
And so packing it is not easy.
That's the hardest part.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes in the process things are broken here and there.
Yeah.
But then wherever you are, then you have to adjust.
Yes. That becomes home, and you've got to replace whatever things are broken.
I went to Dar es Salaam in 1996 to head a mineral research center. So from 1996 to 2001, I was in Dar es Salaam. And then from 2001 to 2009, I was in Addis Ababa. And then from 2009 to 2016, I was here in Kigali, Rwanda. And then from here, I went to Yaoundé until 2021, October 2021, and back now to Addis, where I am now. So it means you have to develop in you that capacity to be able to move. I don't like packing because it's
you have
really,
to get used to
really
it.
very, very, very intensive process.
What was the entry point? What course did you undertake at college? Did you envision yourself in this position? When you're still young and you're talking about careers, did you tell the teachers you wanted to become a diplomat?
Well, no. First, I mean, I wanted to be an electronic engineer. But then, because I had very good grades in some science subjects and so on, and then at that time in the history of Mozambique, we were just coming out of our independence. There was a need to conduct geological mapping and mineral resource inventory of the country. That was considered a priority, so I was sent to do geology. So, so I became a geologist, not by choice, but because it was an imperative of my country at that moment to have a couple of geologists there. But geology really requires a level of abstraction. We measure time in different ways than the rest of the world, as it were. I mean, for example, as you know, the planet Earth is about 4.5 billion years. So that's the kind of metrics that you use. You look at the transitions from the planet was sort of evolving to today, and we have all different periods that have different classifications. So that's how we see things. It's somehow, it gives me a little bit of perspective of how minuscule we are as individuals in the context of all of these long-term, billion years transitions. So you take things, I mean, with that perspective, and then it conditions you to accept certain things perhaps more easily than those that count time in terms of years. I'm not saying that I do not count in years.
You live among us,
exactly.
so you have no choice. Yeah,
absolutely.
How does that come to play in the work that you're doing today?
Well, I think, yes. I mean, at the beginning of my career, I was a little bit more impatient, and I wanted things to be done yesterday. Then with time, I understood that sometimes things take a little bit of more time, and that you have to be aware of the political economy of change now to utilize the language of today, of the things that I'm involved in today. So, and that requires an understanding of what are the kinds of trade-offs that you have to go. For example, I was part and parcel of the people that helped the continent formulate and adopt the Africa Mining Vision. This was adopted by the African Union Heads of States and Government in February 2009. But its implementation took a lot of time for us to see some of the more tangible results of it. And this African Mining Vision is predicated in ensuring that we do not export raw materials. Because exporting raw materials means you're exporting jobs. It means you are not creating this tissue of economic tissue in your country that enables small and medium enterprises to become globally competitive and so on. So in most of our countries, the extractive industry is an enclave with absolutely no linkage with the local economy. And the African Mining Vision, as a framework, is really meant to address those structural problems. And this does not happen overnight.
But this has been going on, the conversation has been going on forever, with most of what is exported raw being imported back into the continent, with a lot being spent on it.
From the days, of Kwame Nkrumah, and I would argue perhaps before that, there was always this vision and goal and ambition about industrializing Africa, about resource-driven industrialization, about creating the links on the continent. But again, as I said, it's not easy to do that. Paradigms matter. For example, the Lagos Plan of Action, 1980s, which the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa played an important role in formulating it, was really about Africa's economic empowerment and emancipation. But this was happening in a period in time where we are equally confronted with the Washington Consensus, which in that particular period of time was really about privatizing or privatization of the entire economic tissue on the continent, which with some of the packages, including liberalization and so on and so forth, whilst the Lagos Plan of Action had a lot of state-led industrialization drive, building aluminium, iron and steel complexes here and there, with the state at the center of all of those efforts. So the paradigm at that time was not conducive for the realization of those ambitions. So that's a little bit of the realpolitik that with time, with age, you start to understand, and then you become a little bit more patient about it. And then there's always in this context, especially today, as you know, the geopolitical and geostrategic tensions are huge, meaning that you have to factor all of those factors in your development options. This is where the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa is contributing towards strengthening Africa's voice and position with evidence-based analysis, identifying what are the opportunities for Africa to secure that elusive economic emancipation. We are currently, for example, as an Economic Commission for Africa, with other partners such as the African Development Bank, Africa-Zim Bank, Africa Finance Corporation, BADEA, and Africa Legal Support Facility, helping the continent to go up in the value chain of a very, very important and strategic sector, which is the battery and electric vehicle value chain. It's a sector that between now and 2025 is going to be about $7.7 trillion, and between now and 2050 is going to be $46 trillion. And some of the
Pedro, let me just cut you short there.
Okay.
We currently stand as the continent with the most indebted countries.
Yeah.
The Economic Commission for Africa has such ambitions. How do you intend to get most of these countries from the place where they are borrowing to probably clear debt or to put up all the necessary infrastructure to a point where you're saying that we will be making trillions?
Yeah, indeed. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa has three main functions through which we operate. One is the think tanking function, so generating all the ideas, evidence-based analysis, and so on. Then we have the convening platforms where we bring African stakeholders together with a view to formulating common voices and positions that then, of course, can inform our negotiations with the rest of the world. And then the last is our operational functions, all the technical advisory service that we provide to our member states. So first, through our think tanking functions, we contribute to analyzing and assessing the level of debt, for example. We service the Debt Sustainability Initiative, which really is a platform that is good not only for African countries, it's for all the highly indebted countries, where we are trying to articulate the policy options to addressing the problematic of debt through our convening function. So we bring all the ministers of finance, planning, and economic development together with a view to discussing the problematic of debt, finding solutions to it, and then engaging with the relevant parties to address that. We, for example, and it's a related issue, financing is very expensive for our member states. We borrow at a premium rate, sometimes, 5 times more than the rest of the world. And that's, of course, is not sustainable, especially because, we are vulnerable countries, structurally dependent on the rest of the world. We are vulnerable to supply side shocks, and so on and so forth. So that package doesn't work for us. The United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has been very clear about this. For his words are very, very explicit about the nature of the international financial architecture that we have. It's obsolete, was created immediately after the World War II to respond to the needs of reconstruction, especially on the war-affected countries in Europe. Today's world is completely different. So we have a high-level group on the reform of the global financial architecture, which again incorporates all the ministers of finance planning, that we are discussing that. Some of the arguments on the reform of the global financial architecture include reallocating the special drawing rights, which many of the countries that have those rights are not using, especially the wealthier countries, to rechanneling those to the countries that need them, including also, of course, a rechanneling for our own African Development Bank, who then can utilize that to leverage 5 times more resources. That's one part of the conversation. The other one is really about simplifying the mechanisms to access concessional financing, and so on and so forth. So we are on those fronts to help our member states to address those problems.
We do hope we will get
it's not only, we don't only focus about problems. We're equally working, as I said earlier, in identifying what are the opportunities. We were just coming from...
And what are those opportunities?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was saying that, we're just coming from the Nairobi, your country, Kenya, from the African Climate Summit, where from President Ruto to the Secretary General, we all indicated that Africa can become a global competitive powerhouse for climate solutions and investment. And this is underpinned by the recognition that we have as the assets that inform climate action. This I'm talking about natural resources, renewable and non-renewable resources. Our forests. Rwanda is part of the Congo Basin, and Congo Basin is the second largest lung on the continent. And it provides ecological services that regulate climate. And our position is that those ecological services need to be valorized and need to be monetized. And this is our work. We organized the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, organized in February this year, the Africa Business Forum on making carbon credit markets work for Africa. Indeed, it's really about first recognizing that ecological services is that our natural capital, our forests, our mangroves, and so on and so forth have a value, and we need to valorize them. And in the process, we also take into consideration that those services, including the carbon sequestration, are helping the rest of the world to combat climate change. And those should be paid. Our calculations are, if we succeed to selling a ton of CO2 sequestrated at $150 a ton, Africa can generate $82 billion a year, much more than overseas development assistance. So this is what we're talking. That's one of the opportunities that I'm referring to.
We'll take a short break here. When we come back, I would love to hear your experience currently in the country, but you also lived here for a very long time from 2006. Our two countries have such a good relationship. I would love us to touch on that. This is The Real Talk. My name is Jackie. Our guest is Pedro Antonio, who's the acting executive secretary of ECA. And we're talking about the commission and how it's helping the continent economically. But of course, this is also an opportunity for us to know a bit more about the acting executive secretary. We are coming to you from Mythos Boutique in Kiyovu. Welcome back to The Real Talk. Please use the hashtag The Real Talk. If you have a question or a comment, kindly send it through. You must be thinking this is heavy on figures. What do we do? We're going to tone it down for you. So now we'll be talking about things that might not make you scratch your head. Pedro, I would love us to take you back a little bit to 2009, is that when you moved to Rwanda?
Yes.
How was it then, coming and living in Kigali, in Rwanda, and then the visit back this time?
Yeah, so first coming here, I came with very clear orders for my chief of staff, means my wife. She said, well, try and find a house with a view to a golf course. So, and
your wife is the chief of staff. How many kids do you have?
I have just one daughter.
Okay.
Yes. So I arrived about May 2009. So on the weekends, I would go around to try and find that elusive house, and so on and so forth. And then one day I was just walking, and I came with a reference, and this is a good friend of my boss then, Mr. Abdullahi Jani, the executive secretary of ECA, of UNECA, and they said, well, when you go to Rwanda, please make sure that you contact Madame Severine. I mean, she is a good friend, I mean, and so on and so forth. The late husband was from UNDP, etc. So you had that reference. So one of these days, and of course I obliged. I contacted her, and we became friends. So, wow. And I knew the sons. And one of these days, I mean, this process of trying to find houses, and then it was the road close to Nyarutarama Tennis Club. And there I see Francois, that's the son, and he says, Pedro, I mean, where are you going? I'm trying to find a house. And he says, you're trying to find a house? Yes. Yeah, so, well, come with me. So we went, and it was his parents' house that was still in construction, and it met absolutely all the points that my chief of staff had asked me to tick. Wow. And I said, well, I mean, this is the house I need. And he said, but I mean, as you see, it's still under construction. But then he said, when is this going to be ready? I said, 3 months or so. So that's how I landed. I was very well received, and it's been a very, very, very important place in my life and experience. This is where I grew in terms of understanding better how to serve our member states, and what we call in our language client orientation, which is really listen, and then adapt and adjust accordingly, and provide, of course, your service on time. So it was beautiful time, done very, very interesting things in this part of the world, Eastern Africa. And very happy that some of the things that we've discussed with our counterparts here now have become a reality. I mean, including Kigali becoming the undeniable MICE hub for the region, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So to the work that we did at that time with IGAD to develop the IGAD Sustainable Tourism Master Plan, which was really to try and indicate to the rest of the region that tourism is a very important sector for this region. And then we developed the idea of helping the countries with what we call the tourism satellite accounts, which basically calculate the weight of or the contribution of tourism to GDP. So those are my first days here.
Have you been to that Nyarutarama area
So
since? Have you seen the transformation?
I come 7 years later.
Yes.
And first, when I left, all of the royal palms in the street, they were still, small and so on. So I come here, they're all grown now. They're big, they're beautiful. So it's really a garden city. So
exactly.
that was my first impression that, wow, this city is fantastic.
And then the golf course has been expanded. Absolutely. It was redone.
Then, we were going to a friend's place, and then I asked the driver, my colleague Epimac from the office, Epimac, I have to see my former house and so on. So he took me that road and so on. I thought I'd recognize the house. I said, no, it's not here, because it has changed completely. That particular the area of the city, and I would say the entire city has changed. Yeah. So I was happily surprised to see the changes and to see that indeed, as we say. Rwanda is a champion on the continent, is a indeed. Reference on leadership, on taking ideas to action, transformational change for that matter. So, and we need this at scale across the entire continent if you want to achieve the SDGs and accelerate the implementation of sustained development goals and the Agenda 2063. So this peer learning process is important.
It is important.
Yeah. So I've been moving around, going to places where I spent a lot of time. Just before coming here, I had a meeting with my staff here in our office. So it was good to see where I spent 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, see some of the changes, new faces. I've seen that some of the persons have retired, others
are still there.
Have white hair, have put a little bit of more weight.
But at least they were still at the office,
absolutely.
Yeah?
So
great.
Meaning it's emotional, it's really homecoming, how do you call it? What's the word for that?
No, you've come back home, no doubt.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you told me the other day you're a football fan, and you're very happy that Mozambique qualified for AFCON. After how long?
Between 18 or 16 years that we were absent from CAN African Championships. Let me share with you one example. This was a game that was played here between Mozambique and Rwanda, and I think at that time my daughter was about 5 years old or something like that, and then she, of course, very proud. She put all the colors.
She painted her
face with the Mozambican flag and so on. And we went there and we were beaten. She was
that's depressing.
So angry that she left the stadium running and had to rush to try and look
to clean her face.
Exactly. So just to say that there is quite a lot of memories from this place. This is where she learned how to ride her bike and so on, and of course in the process, got hurt here and there. So it's
but she enjoyed her time here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
From where you sit, what do you see as the future of the continent? We honestly have had enough of talking of the potential of Africa, and yet in a lot of situations, it always comes as the place with problems. Our presidents travel miles to go meet one president. That is such a show of power. And I'm just wondering, when you see these things, where we're coming from, where we're at today, where do you see us in future? So
I'm an optimist. I'm always hopeful that things will be different. Look at Rwanda. So there we have examples where you associate. One of my favorite quotes these days is that attention is the superpower of the world of today, and that attention linked with intention can move mountains. So it is, and intentions we have. In all of the visions and strategies like the African Continental Free Trade Area, like the PIDA for infrastructure development, the African Mining Vision, which I made reference to earlier. We have the visions, but it's really about the level of attention to detail that we need to improve. And it's about building that implementation capabilities, connecting the dots, and understanding what are the pathways to A to B to Z, and then investing coherently to achieve those targets. So we are, as ECA, helping in that process. And earlier, when we were discussing the outcomes of the Africa Climate Summit and the Nairobi Declaration, Africa wants to be this global powerhouse, and it has all of the assets to achieve that. So that's the potential. We have the potential to become the global powerhouse from natural resources, from our population, from the youthfulness of our population, and so on. Now is really about being much more clinical in the process towards achieving those goals. So what is it that we as ECA are contributing towards that accelerated implementation, scale, and so on? One is to de-risk investments on the continent. So this is not only about building infrastructure, but it's equally about providing that database of information that can enable anyone that is interested on the continent to know exactly where to invest. This is from things like ensuring that we have 54 growth diagnostic studies, which, among other things, will determine what is it that differentiates country A to B. And that's important. Our overall, for example, rate of intra-African trade is between 16 and 20%. Compare that with Europe, which is 70 and above. And with Central Africa, it's 3%.
That's quite low.
Yeah, this is a little bit a legacy issue, because, as you know, as part of the colonial construct, our objective was really to facilitate the export of raw materials from the hinterland to our coasts and so on. So part of the work in the African Continental Free Trade Area is indeed to achieve greater intra-African trade. So by working on better connections, product complementarity between our countries, and so on and so forth. So we are working on that. Our work on determining what is the national value proposition of each of our countries. In other words, what is it differentiates one country from another. And with that, then you can facilitate the specialization of our countries, important for regional integration. We're equally looking at and investing into helping our countries to determine where are within our countries or around our countries, where is the greatest potential for exports. And utilizing, sorry for the technicalities, something called trade decision support modeling. And that is important. Let me explain, for example, with a typical case. When I was the director of our office for Central Africa in Yaoundé, we've done a study to help Cameroon identify what was the countries in the region where they had the greatest potential to export. And of course, Nigeria came strongly, but then, a very important and large country, not too far, DRC, was trade distant because the infrastructure is not there to connect.
The two countries are not connected.
And yet, there's a country that, if you believe in the projections, might have sooner, I'm talking about 2050, 2100 or so, to about 300 million inhabitants. You cannot ignore that market. It means, therefore, that you need to direct your investments in infrastructure to equally benefit from that market, the same way that, of course, they can benefit from Nigeria. And just, as part of that same study, the United States and China were trade more closer or they were closer to Cameroon than DRC, because, of course, all of the bottlenecks.
The disconnect,
so
the
those
bottlenecks.
are the detailed aspects of that we need to invest more. In other words, what is it that can take us from one place to another? One thing leads to another. So, for example, when we have the visions, we don't have the policies, the laws and regulations that can support those visions. When we have the two, we don't have the institutions. When we have the three, we don't have the skills. So it is really about unbundle what it takes and then invest coherently, consistently with everyone. With all those in place, Africa's future is bright.
Because I was going to ask you about that. All the things that you talk about, the political class in Africa is powerful. They're the decision makers. They're the policy makers. Do you see the willingness in that group of people to take Africa far? Or are they just happy majorly with serving themselves and their personal interests? No. And even with the changes that we see, there will be a coup in one African country, and before you know it, it's gone back to the same place where they're trying to run away from. We don't seem to... Okay, we could make several steps forward, but we tend to make very many steps backward.
Well, I was in Nairobi for the Africa Climate Summit. I was in New York for the SDG Summit at the Climate Ambition Summit and so on. And all of our leadership, I mean, at least in their pronouncements, they were very clear about the need for change.
Do you see them walking?
But now this is a joint...
Because they're talking.
This is a joint responsibility. We are talking about the ecosystem for transformational change and leadership on the continent, in which, of course, our leadership has an important and vital role to play, but everybody else has to do. So, I mean, some of the studies they have to play their role. Some of the things that we want to invest more is really, indeed, into this foresight analysis, understanding the future, the pathways to the future, helping the governments with better understanding of the signals coming from their electorate,
people, their
and
citizens,
so on and so forth, so that on time, in other words, through those early warning signals, that they can then invest where they matter. For example, this spatial planning and analysis is critical for you to target better your investments. Even with the little resources that some of our member states have, they can maximize the impacts if they know where they should target. So
because there's also too much wastage, actually.
I'm not in government.
For lack of a better term, really.
I'm not in government, so I cannot I don't have the data to be able to, and I of course, as ECA, we only talk up on the basis of evidence
data.
And so on and so forth. But I could certainly sympathize with the idea that if we do more into these diagnostics, in understanding, I mean, the Secretary General these days talk a lot about foresight analysis, behavioral sciences, and so on and so forth. As this is important for us to avoid the coups that you referred to, because some of these are really just a reflection of the social compacts that were so broken. It's about the electorate not seeing the outcomes of the tax that they pay. So improving tax administration could enable perhaps more resources to be available. In today's world, it's about creating several pockets of leadership. Our captains of industries, have to step in. We need to have more Dangotes of this world that are helping us to accelerate industrialization. Today, he has built some of the largest refineries in Nigeria. He's equally investing in fertilizers and
Tanzania as well,
exporting to Brazil and other countries. So we need to have more of this. So this is the ecosystem for transformational change and leadership that I'm referring to. It's a leadership at all levels. You as a media, you have a role to play. Because, among other things, we are borrowing, and you asked me to not be so heavy in we are borrowing very expensively, among other things, because of the perceptions of the perceptions of how risky our continent is. And sometimes those perceptions, often those perceptions do not reflect the reality on the ground. The media has a role to play to showcase what Africa is all about. It's really frustrating to see in some of the global media that when they want to depict the continent, they will go and only depict the worst parts of our continent. I mean, of course, I mean, I'm one of those that I like transparency. I can show you, of course, the worst of me, and of course, but I equally would like anyone else to also show the best.
The best of you.
And
that's just fair.
And that balancing of that thing would enable us to have a better perception of what the risk profile of the continent. And that can help us to secure terms and conditions that are more favorable to us in terms of our access to financing and so on. So this is basically to say, yes, leadership is a responsibility of all of us.
Everyone.
And of course, people, the elected leaders, have a responsibility. They're accountable to the rest of the world. So we are working to see if some of the things that we have that are obtained here in Rwanda, like in Higu, or that performance contract systems, whether it could be replicated in the rest of the continent, so that then we develop and the domestic appetite for good governance. We develop domestic accountability, so that good governance becomes something that, I mean, I want because it gives tangible benefits to me. It's not about complying to the requirements of, for example, because I'm a mineral exploration geologist, of the compliance with the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, which of course is an important, but governance is more than that. It has to be organic. It has to be a process where everyone, I mean, is accountable for, and we have systems to report. This is where Higu becomes an important, let's say, platform for us to secure that across the continent.
Indeed.
So if we invest more on those issues, then perhaps plus all the early warning information that institutions like ours can provide, and others, then our governments will be more aware of what is happening on our continent. For example, the decentralization is an important agenda for us to address some of those grievances where parts of our countries feel neglected. Some of the things that we have on this GIS-enabled hotspot analysis would, for example, indicate that sometimes you don't need the transfers from the capitals or from the center to the periphery, because in that particular rural area, you have all the assets that you need.
You could develop that rural area.
Yes, you could have more credible rural development plans with the data that we can provide. This is where, I mean, in this particular case, the GIS-enabled hotspot analysis is about combining biophysical data, so all the resources that we have, with the socioeconomic data. How many people have, let's say, primary, secondary, or tertiary education? What kinds of skills, and so on and so forth.
Thank you, Pedro.
That information combined can enable us to achieve development at all levels, including at the most rural area of our continent.
Thank you. We're going to look at Pedro's 6 Qs. Pedro, these are quick questions. I'd love us to rush through them. Yeah. You're watching The Real Talk. Let's have a look at Pedro's 6 Qs. Pedro, what is the best career advice you've ever received?
It was from a person who was my first boss, Rui Santos Garcia. When I joined the Geological Survey in Mozambique, I was very young, just coming out from university. I mean, 20 years old or so, immature. And I had been in the route to going and pursue my postgraduate studies. But then, because of what we started this conversation with, the government said that, well, it's a priority to stay home.
You're not leaving the country.
Exactly.
And what did the mentor tell you?
And I was very, very frustrated, because I thought, well, first I'm here in geology, I want to be an academic, I want to be a professor, all those kinds of things. And I mean, that's what the university had offered me as a pathway. And so I was somehow unhappy. And this gentleman, Rui Santos Garcia, who's the director of the Geological Survey, Directorate of Mines and Geological Survey of Mozambique at that time, said, "You're still young. what's the fuss? Just be patient.
Relax, slow down.
Relax. So, and he was really my mentor throughout. I mean, he's really was about meritocracy, about hard work, discipline, and so on and so forth.
And things got better when you relaxed,
absolutely. And in those days, I mean, of course, I was young. I used to go to the office with white socks. I said, Pedro, don't wear work socks. You have to wear black socks because you know that's how you should conduct, and so on and so forth. Wow. So I mean that was a very good advice. And remember, I said this one thing that I've learned with time is to be patient. And I mean, one of it was really
from him.
Yeah.
What is it about your job that could keep you awake at night?
It's the challenges and the opportunities, really. And there's no other place in the world, I would say, where you have this again and again. So wake up in the morning, faced with this, and then all of this excitement of trying to find what are the solutions for those challenges. This is really what keeps me awake. And sometimes, of course, when we get it through, is of course, the joy of getting it done. I mean, like, for example, recently, we've made a breakthrough in our work on the battery and electric vehicle value chain. That thing, of course, as you say, and I'm not utilizing this platform to promote Red Bull, but you said Red Bull gives you wings. So those things gives me wings for sure.
And what word would best describe you?
I'm a cancer.
Oh, you're a cancer.
You go and read.
I go read everything about the cancer. And do you have any regrets in life?
Well, not really. Of course, as everyone else, I mean, one would have wanted to get some things done faster than others. But again, as a geologist, you know that the time is counted in billions of years. So this is
nothing
just,
major, eh? You don't shake.
Really, yes.
What was the lowest moment of your career?
Well, that's when was the lowest moment? I don't know whether I have any. It was.
Have you ever had a low moment?
Well, of course, everyone has a low moment.
Low, not lowest.
I would say once I was asked to not to do. I mean, some of the things that I loved to do. And do something else. But then I adjusted, as I told you.
You're an optimist.
Yes, optimistic. Yeah. And then I'd look at this thing, it's a matter of time. And it did. I mean, a couple of years later, I mean, here we are doing some of those things.
Indeed.
It's really about, I mean, how you look at this, perspectives and so on. But,
my last question, what would you say to the 20-year-old Pedro?
A 20-year-old Pedro? I would say the world is a huge opportunity. That comes with obstacles sometimes, but re-energize yourselves again and again because you'll be able to make it. That's a message for the youth today. We can deliver the demographic dividends, but it requires investments in ourselves. Maturity does not come overnight. You are asking me about setbacks. Setbacks are part of it, but you learn from it. Okay. And you have to learn from it, especially your mistakes, so that you do not repeat them again and again and again. Because as Einstein says, I mean, if you could do something, you get exactly the same outcome. So you have to be able to adjust, adapt, look at what are the things that have changed around you.
Get the different outcomes.
It's a very convoluted sort of kind of answer, but just to say.
No, I love that. I love the response.
The world requires flexibility, and I mean having your antennas up there to understand what's going on and then adjust things.
Wonderful.
And the road ahead is always promising.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been an honor talking to you.
Pleasure.
Thank you for honoring our invitation.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. Keep us company on The Real Talk. Our guest today was the acting Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa. We look forward to seeing you next week. If you have any questions, please do send those through using the hashtag The Real Talk. God bless you.